You want to reach 107. That's your goal. You want to be able to say that you live 3 ages before you die. But Blopsy, I'm getting super meta here. Well, not necessarily ages, but haven't you, in a very metaphorical sense, already died multiple times? Like, the way I see this, and this is something that I sometimes talk about, like Fada knows this view that I have, but from my own point of view, I already oftentimes talk that about how I have lived several lifetimes already. And this ties into, for example, I often talk about when I used to work in the club, but that literally feels like a lifetime ago. I can hardly imagine that I ever did anything related to that with how I am today and who I am today. There is, before that, I used to work as a hairdresser for a while, and I have a little bit easier time imagining that, but the routine that I was in back then for the amount of years, I have no idea how I did any of that, and yet I did it. And that feels like a separate lifetime, in the same way that I had a lifetime in high school, in elementary school, and all of that. And yeah, exactly, Kiara. You're surprised with what's going on in your life right now. Would you consider this part? You metaphorically, you can see this as part of a new lifetime. And I know that's not what you meant, Plopsy, when you said like having lived for 3 ages. But honestly, if I look, for me personally, if I look at all the different people I have been, I've lived 7 or 6 ages by now. Maybe not in the literal sense, but in a metaphorical sense, definitely. I feel like each month, sometimes each week, is a completely separate lifetime. I can't imagine what it really was even in a not so distant past. So see? In the metaphorical sense, you maybe did, but it also like depends on how much your life changes, I feel, in those months.
I think many people have a destructive phase in their 20s though. Like, 20s are about age that you kind of break free from like the whoever your guardians are, and you just start to let loose. Like, I started studying in my 20s, and I know I've made some poor decisions around that time as well. Like, oof. Like, university versus secondary school here, like, especially the type of secondary school I went to, it was so wildly different, and I was finally with my tribe, so to say, like, with, like, eccentric, like, philosophy people who actually kind of seemed to like me and not bully me. So, for me, this was the first time I got to learn how to socialize, because I didn't get rejected by the group for being weird or something, and a lot of like social standards and how to socialize in a group setting I learned through that, but I may have fucked it around the way.
I mean, I know the latest of your mistakes. Hi. I love you.
But a lot of what's socially acceptable I only learned in my 20s because I got to let loose around that time.
Fair. No, and yeah, and I think the part of being destructive, I mean, yeah, my late 20s, that's when I worked in a nightclub. Yeah, literally my late 20s. And that's when I did a whole bunch of drugs and stuff, you know? And that was definitely super destructive. And I definitely wasn't the nuanced, calm person that I am now, you know?
I think I started to show less destructive behavior around the time that I started choosing for me. So it would be about 3 years back when I burnt out. I started actually making choices to me. I still sometimes make destructive choices, but I think that I've been growing in that sense. And I'm 30 now. Like, I think that 30 is about an age where you're more or less settled into who you are as a person, a bit more than when you're 20s and still trying to figure it out and figure out how to go about life. You still don't know how to go about life in 30, but you're a bit more...
I'm 32 and I still have no idea what I'm doing.
You're a bit more stable in your identity, and that in itself is valuable in And that in itself is valuable in learning how to set boundaries and
Yeah.
knowing what you want and how to, well, maybe not how to go about that, but knowing what you want already is a power.
It is. And Blupsy, you're saying you don't feel like it's dying, but rather evolving, and that is a very valid way of looking at this, and that's kind of like why I'm saying specifically that I talk about the metaphorical meanings of it. And what is true for one person doesn't have to be true for another. If for you it feels like evolving, it can still be like the moves that you didn't know from your pre-evolutions that you do know now and that make you act differently, you know?
But even with Pokemon, if you look at the show, how wildly different personalities are depending on the evolution.
Oh, well, yeah.
It is literally like different lifetimes. Like Ash's Charmander is nothing like Ash's Charmander.
Yeah, but that also has to do with the fact that it's been traded and all of that. Like there's a few things to that.
As it evolved, its personality drastically changed.
I think the Journeys anime did a really good job with that. When you have like Go, he has like the Sobble, and then Drizzle, and then Inteleon. And there you see it is really good how the personality changes. Let me see, I really hope my 30s will finally be the time I am not destructive. It gets really tiring once it hits multiple decades. Yes, it does. I mean, hopefully your style of being destructive has changed because you've been learning. Kiara, you're saying trans envy held you in most of your 20s. Any amount of destruction and backstabbing, backstabbing and backtalking you did was awful. So I'm doing my best to make up for it to the people I hurt. Even people, well, I mean, it should be especially to the people you consider friends. Like the ones you didn't consider friends, or vice versa. From my point of view, shouldn't take priority because they're not friends, you know. But that's a little bit of everything. And then you're saying, Kiara, when you started HRT, it was like a fog lifted in my head and I felt better. Then I looked at my past and go, did I set this whole force? I kind of feel that, like, definitely before I started my transition, I was a lot more self-destructive. Whether we're talking about in the literal sense about, like, yeah, I used to smoke a lot of weed and I used to drink a lot more and all of that, but they didn't magically get fixed, but definitely the precedent was always there until I got... I keep saying this, but I thank the universe for COVID happening. That's what set me free from a lot of this. And I'm still working on some of it, of course. Thank you. But I am in such a better place. And I always feel guilty saying this, but I literally thank COVID for... Like, it feels weird how thankful I am for COVID as a world event. Because of how much it brought me, honestly. And I like the idea of Digivolve. That's kind of like... But it also implies that you can undo the progress you made, I think. See? Armless Monk, hello. Yeah, no, but that is exactly the thing that I'm saying, why I talk about feeling guilty about what it brought me, because I know it brought so much suffering into the world, like not people who died, but also the people who suffer from long COVID and all of that. And of course, two things can be true at the same time. For me, on a personal level, it can have brought good things, while on a global scale, it has brought a lot of bad. You can be thankful for being given the time to think and change and not be... Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, only those who are still alive can still philosophize. Exactly. Big ass content warning here, but I want to give context to what I am telling and talking about. Right around the time, right before COVID hit, I was in a job working in a nightclub where I was seriously depressed, and I was literally not caring about my health and safety. I was doing a whole bunch of drugs. I was drinking so much more alcohol than is humanly good. I was not in a good place. And because of circumstances, I stayed in that job, and I was offered the opportunity to get a steady contract, a vast contract, like where most people only get half-year contracts, and after 3 of them you're fired. I got a steady contract, and I couldn't refuse that because of circumstances. And I signed that contract, and I was ready to off myself. Completely and utterly ready for that. And 2 weeks later, COVID hit, and the club closed down. So many things changed because of that. Like, well, the club closed down. The place where I was stuck without much choice, and it made me so depressed and self-destructive, closed down, and I was set free. You know, I am literally still alive because COVID happened. And that's what I mean with, like, the context of it. I realize that COVID brought so much pain around the world and for so many people. And we're talking about deaths, we're talking about long COVID, we're talking about all of the shit that happened, including the discourse with anti-vaxxers and all of that. And that's what I mean when I say, like, that I feel guilty about how happy I am that COVID hit. Because I would have not lived for another half year were it not for losing my job at the time, you know? So, and it is so hard to have, like, both these things can be true at the same time, but it is so complicated because I see all the pain. I see, for example, my grandpa. He didn't die of COVID, but he's still suffering from the effects of having COVID over a freaking year ago. You know, I see the pain and suffering, and I get it, and I hate it. But I'm still alive because it happened. Like, two things can be true at the same time, you know? And that's kind of the thing. And it's hard to have this live in peace with each other. And there is a part of me that feels guilty about it. But this is also something that I've been working on to let go, because honestly, one man's trash is another man's treasure, you know? And so I shouldn't feel guilty about the good that happened for me, but I can also acknowledge the bad and the crap that happened. And yeah, so that's the rant, that's the context. So yeah, and of course, because we're still alive, we can philosophize about this, and we can think about these things and all of it. And yeah, chaos, more or less like you're saying, it's not that I'm thankful for COVID, but for the things around it. Yeah. Yeah, no, so Michaela, Chaos, y'all are saying I didn't cause COVID. I think you underestimate how badly I was wishing for a way out of that contract, for a way out of that job. I was wishing it with so much intensity. And yeah. So Look, in my core, I am a witch. I'm a Wiccan. I believe that your intent, your thoughts, everything has a certain power. And realistically, I am not personally responsible for COVID happening. Nor for the idiots who bought so much toilet paper. Like, what the fuck? No, but that's what I'm saying, Chaos. Like, as a witch, intent and thoughts and all of that are important, and it matters. If I wish good things upon people, then good things will happen. Sort of like that. It's a little bit more complicated than that. But that's what I'm explaining. There is a part of me, like, that just sees how badly I was wishing for a way out of that contract, and then seeing that barely 2 weeks later, that pandemic hit, and I lost the job that I wanted to lose, you know?